Irene Garza was a distinguished American schoolteacher and beauty queen whose tragic demise has captivated investigators for decades. She was last seen on April 16, 1960, when she attended confession at Sacred Heart Church in McAllen, Texas. The following morning, her family reported her missing. In what became the largest volunteer search in the history of the Rio Grande Valley, her body was ultimately discovered in a canal on April 21st. An autopsy revealed that she had suffered sexual assault before her death, which was determined to be caused by suffocation. Born in 1934, Irene was the daughter of Nicolas and Josefina, who owned a thriving dry cleaning business in McAllen, a city nestled in the picturesque South Texas border region. By her teenage years, the family's success allowed them to relocate to a more affluent neighborhood. A proud graduate of McAllen High School, she made history as the first Latina to serve as a twirler and head drum majorette. In 1958, she was crowned Miss All-South Texas Sweetheart and later became a homecoming queen at Pan American College. At the time of her untimely death, Garza was dedicated to her role as a second-grade teacher, imparting knowledge to underprivileged students at a local elementary school. In a heartfelt letter to a friend before her disappearance, she described herself as exceedingly shy, but found joy in her vocation. She noted her recent appointment as secretary of the Parent-Teacher Association, which had begun to bolster her self-confidence. A devoted member of the Legion of Mary, Garza held her Catholic faith in high regard, finding solace in her daily attendance at Mass and Communion. On that fateful Saturday, she informed her parents of her intention to go to confession at Sacred Heart Church, where her striking beauty made her a memorable presence among the congregation, with several parishioners recalling her attendance that evening. In the evening, when her parents failed to receive any word from her, their initial assumption was that she had chosen to remain at the church for the Easter Vigil Mass. However, as the clock struck 3 a.m. and their daughter still had not returned, they felt compelled to visit the McAllen Police Department to report her missing. On April 18th, a trail of evidence, spanning several hundred yards along a McAllen road, led passers-by to discover Garza's purse, her left shoe, and her delicate lace veil. This prompted authorities and volunteers to initiate what would become the largest search in the history of the Rio Grande Valley. In a perplexing twist, a woman purporting to be Garza contacted her family, claiming she had been abducted and taken to a hotel in the nearby town of Hidalgo. However, this call was later determined to be a hoax. Additionally, a man, after indulging in excessive drinking, remarked to an Edinburgh waitress, claiming he had killed Garza, which was dismissed as a drunken jest. Tragically, Garza's body was discovered in a canal on April 21st, located several miles from where the other evidence had been found. The post-mortem examination revealed that she had succumbed to suffocation, having been raped while unconscious and subjected to brutal beatings. Bruising was evident around both her eyes and the right side of her face. Unfortunately, any potential physical evidence that could have identified her assailant, such as hair, blood, or semen, had seemingly been washed away during the time her body spent in the canal. In their pursuit of justice, law enforcement officials interrogated approximately 500 individuals across various Texas cities, including known sex offenders, as well as Garza's family members, colleagues, and former partners. They conducted nearly 50 polygraph tests and offered a reward of $2,500 for information regarding her death, a sum unprecedented in the context of Rio Grande Valley murder cases. Subsequently, South Texas businessmen contributed an additional $10,000 to the reward fund. Among those who came under scrutiny was Father John Feet, the priest who had heard Garza's last confession and who had been serving at the McAllen Church since completing his seminary training in San Antonio. Church members observed that Feet's confession line progressed at a languid pace on the evening of Garza's disappearance, and he was seen leaving the sanctuary on multiple occasions. Following the draining of the canal days after Garza's body was discovered, a photo slide viewer belonging to Feet was unearthed. Colleagues within the clergy noted the presence of scratch marks on Feet's hands after the Easter Vigil Mass, remarking that it was unusual for him to have escorted Garza to the church rectory for her confession, as he allegedly did that night. Initially, McAllen police reported that Feet had successfully passed polygraph tests, though these results were later deemed inconclusive. Feet first denied having heard Garza's confession in the rectory, but subsequently acknowledged it. He explained his absences from the sanctuary by claiming he had broken his glasses that evening, stating that he often fidgeted with them nervously while listening to confessions. Feet recounted that he had driven to the pastoral house, a mere short distance away, to retrieve another pair of glasses, only to find himself without a key upon arrival, necessitating his ascent to the second floor through a window. He claimed the scratches on his hands were a result of this climb up the exterior of the brick building. Just 3 weeks before Garza's tragic demise, a woman named Maria America Guerra had been sexually assaulted while kneeling at the communion rail of another Catholic church in the McAllen vicinity. Whispers circulated that Feet was implicated, yet local church authorities urged the community to dismiss the notion that a priest could be involved in such a heinous act. Feet acknowledged visiting a priest at that church on the day of Guerra's assault, but firmly denied any wrongdoing. Ultimately, he faced charges of rape, leading to a trial that resulted in a hung jury. In 1962, opting to avoid a retrial, Feet entered a no-contest plea to a misdemeanor charge of aggravated assault, resulting in a $500 fine. Years later, he expressed confusion over the implications of his no-contest plea, believing it would not be regarded as a conviction in the matter. Following the legal proceedings surrounding the Guerra case, Feet was sent to Assumption Abbey, a Trappist monastery nestled in Missouri. An abbot at the abbey confided in monk Dale Tacony that Feet had committed a murder and requested Tacony to mentor him for several months to assess his potential for monastic life. Tacony recounted that Feet admitted to inflicting harm on a young woman and taking the life of another, yet he felt it was not his place to pass judgment at that time. Remarkably, Feet's confession remained undisclosed to the authorities for many years. Feet struggled to adapt to the monastic lifestyle at Assumption Abbey. Subsequently, he was transferred to Jemez Springs, New Mexico, to attend a treatment retreat for troubled priests, overseen by the servants of the Paraclete. Following his treatment, he became a staff member and gradually ascended to a supervisory position at the center. Father James Porter, who had gained notoriety for molesting children in the 1960s, arrived at the center, and Feet approved his placement in another parish. Porter would later be defrocked and imprisoned for abusing as many as 100 children. In the 1970s, Feet departed from the priesthood, married, and relocated to the Phoenix area, where he raised 3 children. He dedicated 17 years to volunteering at the Society of St. Vincent de Paul, a food charity. In 2002, Tacony resolved that he could no longer harbor the secret of Feit's confession. Believing the murder had occurred in San Antonio, where Feit had received training, Tacony contacted the authorities in that city. This prompted the reopening of the investigation into Garza's death. Texas Rangers investigator Rudy Jaramillo reached out to Father Joseph O'Brien, a priest who had collaborated with Feet during the time of Garza's demise. While O'Brien had previously claimed ignorance about the murder in a 2000 television interview, he later confessed to Jaramillo that Feet had indeed confessed shortly after the incident. Later that same year, the polygraph examiner who had tested Feet in 1960 expressed doubts regarding the accuracy of the reported results. The preliminary report indicated that Feet had successfully passed the polygraph examination. However, subsequent revisions altered this conclusion to reflect that the results were inconclusive, with the examiner maintaining a belief that fate had indeed failed the test. Rene Guerra, who served as the district attorney of Hidalgo County from the 1980s until 2014, opted not to present the Garza case to a grand jury until 2004. Notably, Tacheny, O'Brien, and Feet were not issued subpoenas in this matter, and the grand jury ultimately chose not to indict Feit. O'Brien passed away in 2005. Guerra expressed hesitance in revisiting the case, citing the initial police investigation as inadequate, O'Brien's dementia during questioning, and the absence of physical evidence. He also noted that Jaramillo had improperly informed Tacheny of the murder's location after the monk mistakenly claimed it took place in San Antonio. Guerra's comments questioning why anyone would be troubled by Garza's death incensed her family as he remarked, "She died. Her killer got away." In 2014, District Court Judge Ricardo Rodriguez campaigned to unseat Guerra, bringing the Garza case into the political spotlight. Rodriguez expressed his commitment to seeking justice for the Garza family and vowed to reassess the case if elected. Following Rodriguez's election as district attorney, Guerra attempted to appoint him as a special prosecutor for the Garza case, a proposal Rodriguez declined, preferring to review the evidence himself upon taking office in January 2015. In April, he declared the reopening of the Garza case. By February 2016, Feet was apprehended in Scottsdale, Arizona, at the age of 83, appearing in court with the assistance of a walker. He was extradited to Texas in March 2016 and detained at the Hidalgo County Sheriff Adult Detention Facility, where he entered a plea of not guilty. The prosecution sought a bond of $750,000, while the defense requested a bond of $100,000, citing Feet's diagnosis of stage 3 kidney and bladder cancer. Judge Luis Singletary established a bond of $1 million. Status hearings regarding the case took place in June and November of 2016, with the discovery process still in progress as of November. In February 2017, a judge scheduled a trial date for late April, while Feit continued to be under medical supervision at the Hidalgo County Jail. In April 2017, Feit's defense team sought a change of venue, arguing that a fair and impartial trial could not be guaranteed in Hidalgo County. They submitted a comprehensive 700-page document containing evidence that suggested media outlets had already labeled Feit a murderer, and that his previous evasion of prosecution was allegedly due to protection from the Roman Catholic Church. In March, Tacheny provided testimony against Feit during a closed deposition, a procedure allowed under Texas law due to the witness's age and unique knowledge of the case. On May 24th, Judge Singletary listened to arguments from both the prosecution and defense regarding the venue change request. On June 7th, he ultimately denied the motion, concluding that the defendant had not sufficiently demonstrated any prejudice within the Hidalgo community. On July 19th, Feit made an appearance in court for a pre-hearing, with the trial anticipated to commence on September 11th. However, on September 10th, the court postponed the trial due to scheduling conflicts, as one of Feit's attorneys was engaged in defending another high-profile murder case in Hidalgo County. Feit appeared in court on September 11th, notably without a prison uniform, expecting to begin his trial that week. The initial jury selection phase occurred in mid-September, but the trial was delayed until mid-October. On October 30th, Feit's defense filed a motion for continuance, resulting in jury selection being rescheduled for November 14th, and the trial date moved from November 6th to November 28th. Ultimately, on December 7th, Feit was found guilty of Garza's murder. During the sentencing phase of the trial, Feit's defense counsel advocated for probation, highlighting his clean record devoid of felony convictions since the tragic demise of Garza. In contrast, the prosecution sought a substantial sentence of 57 years, a figure that poignantly represented the time elapsed since Garza's passing. Ultimately, on December 8, 2017, the jury rendered a life sentence. Fite was subsequently confined at the W.J. Estelle unit, located a mere 10 miles north of central Huntsville, Texas. He passed away from natural causes on February 12, 2020. Eitan Khalil Patz was a young American boy who, at the tender age of 6, vanished on May 25, 1979, while en route to his school bus stop in the charming Soho district of Lower Manhattan. His mysterious disappearance became a pivotal moment in the movement for missing children, inspiring new legislation and innovative methods for locating lost youth. Years later, Eitan was among the first children to be featured in the iconic Missing Child on a Milk Carton campaigns that emerged in the early 1980s. In a significant tribute, President Ronald Reagan proclaimed May 25th as National Missing Children's Day in the United States, marking the anniversary of Eitan's disappearance. On that fateful morning, Eitan ventured out from his Soho residence at 113 Prince Street, embarking on his first solo journey to catch the school bus just 2 blocks away at the intersection of West Broadway and Prince Street. He was dressed in a black Future Flight Captain pilot cap, a blue corduroy jacket, blue jeans, and blue sneakers adorned with fluorescent stripes. Tragically, he never boarded the bus. At school, his absence went unnoticed by his teacher, who failed to inform the principal. When Eitan did not return home after classes, his mother, Julie, promptly alerted the authorities. Initially, detectives scrutinized the Patz family as potential suspects, but swiftly cleared them of any wrongdoing. An extensive search was launched that very evening, involving nearly 100 police officers and a dedicated team of bloodhounds. This search persisted for weeks, with neighbors and law enforcement scouring the city and distributing missing child posters featuring Eitan's likeness, yet yielding few leads. Eitan's father, Stanley, a professional photographer, had captured numerous images of his son, which were reproduced on countless missing child posters and milk cartons. These poignant photographs were also displayed on large screens in Times Square. In 1985, Assistant United States Attorney Stuart R. Grabos took on the case and identified Jose Antonio Ramos, a convicted child sexual offender with ties to Eitan's former babysitters, as the primary suspect. In 1982, several young boys accused Ramos of attempting to entice them into a drain pipe near his residence. A police investigation of the drain pipe uncovered photographs of Ramos alongside boys who bore a striking resemblance to Eitan. Grabos later discovered that Ramos was in custody in Pennsylvania for an unrelated child molestation case. By 1990, Grabos had been appointed as a deputy state attorney general in Pennsylvania, tasked with prosecuting Ramos for the sexual abuse of children and gathering additional details regarding Eitan's case. During his initial interrogation, Ramos claimed that on the day Eitan vanished, he had taken a young boy to his apartment with the intent to assault him. He asserted he was 90% sure it was the boy he later recognized on television, though he refrained from mentioning Eitan by name. He further alleged that he had placed the boy on a subway heading uptown. In 1991, while Ramos was incarcerated, a jailhouse informant relayed to Grabos and FBI agent Mary Galligan that Ramos had confessed to knowing the fate of Eitan. He even sketched a map detailing Eitan's school bus route, demonstrating his awareness that Eitan's bus stop was the third on the line. A special feature on missing children, published by the New York Post on October 21, 1999, identified Ramos as the primary suspect in Eitan's disappearance. Although Ramos had been known to the Pats family and was always considered the main suspect, authorities in the early 1980s were unable to bring charges against him. Etan's remains were never discovered, and he was declared legally dead on June 19, 2001. In 2004, Stan and Julie Pats successfully pursued a civil case against Ramos, receiving a symbolic award of $2 million, which they have yet to collect. To this day, Ramos has not faced criminal charges for Etan's murder. Each year, on the anniversary of Etan's birth and the day of his disappearance, Stan Pats sends Ramos a copy of his son's missing child poster, inscribed with the haunting question, "What did you do to my little boy?" Ramos has consistently denied any involvement in Etan's death. Ramos endured a 2-decade incarceration at the State Correctional Institution in Dallas, Pennsylvania, due to charges of child molestation. He regained his freedom on November 7, 2012, only to be apprehended shortly thereafter for violating Megan's Law. The 2004 judgment against him was dismissed by Stan and Julie Pats following a 2015 trial that led them to believe Ramos bore no responsibility for their son's tragic fate. On May 25, 2010, Manhattan District Attorney Cyrus Vance Jr. officially reopened the investigation into the case. On April 19, 2012, a collaborative effort between the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the New York City Police Department commenced, focusing on the excavation of the Soho basement at 127B Prince Street, located near the Pats residence. This particular property had undergone renovations shortly after Etan's mysterious disappearance in 1979, and the basement had served as a workshop and storage area for a handyman. After an extensive 4-day search, investigators concluded that no definitive evidence had been uncovered. On May 24, 2012, New York Police Commissioner Raymond Kelly revealed that a suspect had been taken into custody, a man who had implicated himself in the case of Etan's disappearance. This individual was identified as 51-year-old Pedro Hernandez from Maple Shade, New Jersey, who allegedly confessed to strangling the young boy. In his written statement to the authorities, Hernandez expressed remorse, stating, "I'm sorry, I shoksik him." According to a 2009 publication titled After Etan, it was noted that Etan had $1 in his possession and had informed his parents of his intention to purchase a soda to accompany his lunch. At the time of Etan's vanishing, Hernandez was an 18-year-old employee at a local convenience store. He later claimed to have disposed of Etan's remains in the trash. Hernandez faced charges of second-degree murder, although a New York Times report from May 25, 2012, indicated that law enforcement had yet to find any physical evidence to support his confession. In 2012, a man named Jose Lopez from New Jersey approached investigators with a grave suspicion. He believed that his brother-in-law, Hernandez, was implicated in the mysterious disappearance of Etan. Testimonies from Hernandez's sister, Nina, along with Tomas Rivera, the leader of a charismatic Christianity group at St. Anthony of Padua, a Roman Catholic church in Camden, New Jersey, suggested that Hernandez may have made a public confession regarding Etan's murder in the early 1980s, amidst fellow congregants. Nina described it as an open family secret that he had admitted this within the church's walls. On November 14, 2012, a New York grand jury formally charged Hernandez with second-degree murder and first-degree kidnapping. His attorney revealed that Hernandez had been diagnosed with schizotypal personality disorder, which encompasses hallucinations, and noted that he possessed a low intelligence quotient, IQ, of approximately 70, placing him on the threshold of intellectual disability. On December 12, 2012, Hernandez entered a plea of not guilty to 2 murder charges and 1 kidnapping charge in a New York court. In April 2013, his legal aid criminal defense attorney Harvey Fishbein sought to dismiss the case, arguing that Hernandez's confession, linked to one of the most infamous child disappearances in the nation, was unreliable, riddled with dubious assertions, and extracted after nearly 7 hours of police interrogation. The following month, New York Supreme Court Justice Maxwell Wiley determined that the evidence was legally sufficient to support the charges, allowing the case to proceed. He also mandated a hearing to assess the admissibility of the defendant's statements during the trial. A hearing in September 2014 was held to evaluate whether Hernandez's remarks made prior to the police administering his Miranda rights could be legally considered in court, hinging on whether he felt he was free to leave before being Mirandized. The hearing aimed to assess whether Hernandez comprehended the importance of his Miranda rights and was capable of waiving them at the time he did so. This determination was crucial, as it would influence the legal admissibility of any statements made by Hernandez thereafter during the trial. The focus of the hearing was not on the veracity of those statements. Instead, the matter of their truthfulness was to be addressed during the trial, which commenced on January 5, 2015. The case ultimately resulted in a mistrial in May 2015, due to a jury that was deadlocked with an 11-1 vote against conviction. A retrial commenced on October 19, 2016, in a New York City court, with jury deliberations taking place in February 2017. On February 14, 2017, Hernandez was convicted of kidnapping and felony murder. Sentencing was initially set for February 28th, with Hernandez facing a potential sentence of 25 years to life in prison. However, his attorneys were granted a postponement to contest the verdict, and no new sentencing date was established. On April 18, 2017, Hernandez received a life sentence with the possibility of parole after serving a minimum of 25 years. The appellate court unanimously upheld the conviction on March 26, 2020. On the evening of Thursday, January 9, 2003, the enchanting town of Guermont was shaken by the mysterious disappearance of 9-year-old Estelle Mouzin. Last seen in front of a charming bakery, she was on her way home to her mother, Suzanne Mouzin, who was navigating the complexities of a divorce from her husband, Eric Mouzin. Concerned for her daughter's safety, Suzanne promptly reported Estelle missing to the local authorities shortly after 7 p.m., igniting a media frenzy that captivated the nation. The initial focus of the investigation fell upon the notorious serial killer, Michel Fourniret, who had been apprehended in Belgium in June 2003. However, the police soon dismissed him as a suspect, as he appeared to have an alibi, evidenced by a phone call made from his residence at the time of Estelle's disappearance. Notably, just 2 weeks prior, a girl of similar age had narrowly escaped an abduction attempt by a man in a white van, providing a facial composite that was later shown to Fourniret, who was ruled out by the young witness. In a chilling twist, while leading authorities to the site where he had buried one of his victims, Fourniret described the clothing worn by that victim, which bore a striking resemblance to what Estelle had on the day she vanished. Despite his alibi and vehement denials, Fourniret was thrust back into the spotlight when investigators discovered a video and photographs of Estelle on his computer. Nevertheless, in 2007, the case against him was ultimately shelved due to the persistent alibi and insufficient evidence. The investigation, spearheaded by Commissioner Jean-Marc Bloch, was extensive and unprecedented, with over 130 individuals interrogated and every residence in the area meticulously searched. The inquiry took a dramatic turn on January 31, 2008, when further arrests were made in the nearby cities of Brie-Comte-Robert and Logness, including a search of the Royal Walk restaurant in Brie-Comte-Robert, driven by suspicions that human remains might be uncovered. On February 1st, the previously held theory was rendered baseless, as only animal remains were discovered at the restaurant. In 2010, French authorities initiated a renewed appeal for witnesses, circulating a digitally aged portrait of Estelle Mouzin. A decade later, in March 2020, Michel Fourniret admitted to the murder of Mouzin. On January 23, 2020, before Judge Sabine Keris, Fourniret claimed that his recollections had overwhelmed him, yet he insisted he must be regarded as guilty concerning Estelle Mouzin's disappearance. "I implore you to consider me guilty," Fourniret stated. To ascertain the validity of his confession, Monique Olivier, Fourniret's former spouse, was summoned for further questioning. Olivier asserted that Fourniret was indeed the individual accountable for the abduction and murder of Estelle Mouzin. On January 24, 2020, she confirmed to Judge Keris that it was she, not Fourniret, who had called the residence of Fourniret's son on January 9, 2003, the very day the girl vanished, noting that the girl fit the profile her husband sought. She further revealed that Fourniret had conducted reconnaissance in the days leading up to the abduction and recounted an evening when he returned from hunting, remarking that he had encountered a beautiful little target. On August 21, 2020, Olivier's attorney announced that she had been charged with complicity, asserting that her ex-husband had kidnapped Estelle Mouzin on January 9, 2003, transporting her to Ville-sur-Loum in the Ardennes to sequester her, and that he had subsequently raped and strangled her. Partial DNA evidence belonging to Estelle Mouzin was discovered on a mattress in Fourniret's sister's former residence. Fourniret passed away in 2021 before he could face trial,